Each person has gone through their own personal journey that lasts through their lifetime. If this is to be true, then Alexander Niemcyzk had a journey that could last for two.
The 1990 version of the 103 Al Niemcyzk.
Alexander Al Niemcyzk was born September 9th, 1887, in Czechoslovakia. Ethnically Polish, his family moved back to Poland shortly after he was born. As an infant, he was placed in the care of his aunt. His aunt had recently lost a child of her own in an accident in which the child fell into a fireplace. In the aunt's grief, Al's parents gave him over to his aunt in an attempt to ease her pain. In 1889, Al was kidnapped by his aunt and uncle and brought over to the United States, where they settled in Boston. For historical context, the Ellis Island Immigration Station wouldn't be established until 1892. His real family was under the presumption that they would eventually return with him, but they never did. Being just over a year old at the time, Al never knew of his real family and grew up believing that his aunt and uncle were his biological parents. He never saw his real parents again. Growing up, Al learned English as well as speaking his native tongue. His uncle Joseph, who he believed to be his father, was a successful cabinet maker. It was reported that he once sold an eagle-engraved table to a doctor for $300. Al attended the Boston Latin School, one of the oldest public schools in the United States. He was a catcher on the school's baseball team and played with classmate Joseph P. Kennedy, a future senator, and father of future President John F. Kennedy. He was also friends with Rose Fitzgerald, the future wife of John Kennedy. However, unlike his political peers, Al would never graduate high school. During his teen years, Al would learn the truth about his family.
The word was
I'm recording.
he was outside talking to a neighbor, and of course they're in a Polish community, the houses and stuff. And the woman came out of the back of the house and yelling to Grampy, like come in, or she was yelling something to him. And he was talking to a friend. And he turned around and answered her, said, "Okay, Ma." And she said, because she knew, the families all knew each other, and she was from the old country, and she said, "Why do you call her Ma? That's your aunt," because she knew the story. Nobody had ever told him.
It was then Al finally learned the truth about who his real parents were. This put a strain on a relationship that was already turning sour. Al's surrogate mother was horribly abusive towards him. In one altercation, Al's aunt accused him of stealing 25 cents from her, which Al claimed to have never done, even in his old age. This culminating in her beating him with a broomstick, which only ended after the broom broke over his back. After this incident, at only 16 years old, Al ran away from home. Shortly after running away, he enlisted in the Merchant Marines as a cook on a ship, leaving the United States to work on the construction of the Panama Canal. His stay in Panama didn't last long, however. In the late 1800s, malaria and yellow fever broke out, resulting in the deaths of over 22,000 workers. Al was quoted as saying, "People were dropping like flies," and so he and his friends decided they needed to leave the area before they too would succumb to the virus. The only problem was that guards were stationed around the construction areas to prevent workers from trying to leave. Unable to leave on their own terms, Al and his friends needed to find a way to sneak out of the compound. They befriended a man with a hay cart who agreed to help them escape. They laid down flat in the cart and had hay placed over them. This allowed them to quietly sneak out of the country and into Central America. Al made his way up through Central America, working odd jobs to get by. Very little is known about what Al did during this time, and when he was alive, he refused to speak of it. Eventually, he crossed the Mexican-American border into Brownsville, Texas. At this time, Al was only in his late teens. From there, he traveled cross-country. He helped pay his way back to the East Coast from a diamond he had kept in the heel of his shoe. Eventually, he settled in Philadelphia. He took a job restoring furniture to get by. Also during this time, he briefly became a boxer, going under the name Kid Nelson. He won a golden shaving cup. Eventually, he saved up enough money to move back to Boston, where he met his future wife, Helen Swalgen. She was born in December of 1886 in Germany. She immigrated to the United States in 1902 when she was only 16. She met Al at a dance in the town of Everett, Massachusetts. Like Al, she was also fluent in Polish. They were married on August 9th, 1909, in the Holy Cross Cathedral in the South End of Boston, which was the head of the Boston Diocese. Al was only 22. Together they had 5 children, 3 girls and 2 boys. Al and his family eventually moved to the town of Lynn and started working at a General Electric company between 1912 and 1913. He left this job in Lynn due to a brutal supervisor. He then took a job as a cobbler. It is said that they would make 3 cases of shoes a day for only $7. Soon after, however, Al began to work for himself.
What happened was he was at this store, and the guy, the proprietor of the store, asked him if he wanted to play poker. So he says, yeah, I play poker. He went in the game, supposedly in the teens, and he won $200 in the poker game at that time. Imagine that? That's a lot of money.
Afterwards, the owner of the store approached him and offered to sell him the store. He used the winnings from the poker game and the cash he had already on him to purchase the store. Al and his family ran the store for several years. At the time, steak only cost 35 cents. After selling the store, Al and his family moved again, this time to Peabody, Massachusetts, in 1925. He opened up his own cobbler shop on Center Street. Al and his family lived in Peabody for 14 years, until buying a house on Bellevue Avenue in Salem, Massachusetts, near Gallows Hill, where it was once believed that it was the site of the Salem witch trial hangings. The city of Salem even offered Al a majority of the land on Gallows Hill for only $300, but he refused. Despite coming so far from where he started, Al's past always seemed to haunt him, even into his old age. One day, he noticed an article in the paper that stated that people were searching for him, but he never answered it, and shortly after, Al received a phone call for someone asking for him, but Al convinced the person on the other line that they had the wrong number before hanging up. It is unknown who this person was, or why they were looking for him. His journey seemed to end after he and his family moved to Salem, where they lived out the rest of their days. One of his favorite hobbies included watching baseball. He was a lifelong Red Sox fan, ever since their inaugural game in 1908. His other hobbies including playing cards at the Knights of Columbus. And when Al became too old to drive, his friends would come and pick him up. Each year, his family would visit him to celebrate his birthday. He lived to be 105. Al Niemcyzk passed away in his sleep in July of 1993. He now survives through the stories and memories of his relatives. His motto for living was, clean living and don't worry about anything.
I'm sorry I couldn't be amongst you, but I'm more than glad to see all of you here attending and thinking of me and giving me this day. It might be the last one, you can't tell, but I hope to see you again if it's possible.